Sarah Mitchell had not slept properly in 3 days. Between the double shifts at the diner, the stack of unpaid bills wedged behind the kitchen clock, and her 7-year-old daughter, Emma's persistent cough that she could not afford to get checked by a doctor, sleep had become something of a luxury she could no longer claim. She walked home that Tuesday evening through the cold Chicago streets with aching feet and $43 in tips stuffed into her coat pocket, telling herself that at least tomorrow was another day, that things would somehow find a way to work themselves out, even when every piece of evidence in her life suggested otherwise. It was somewhere between the bus stop and the corner grocery that she spotted it lying on the wet sidewalk. A slim black leather wallet, thick and expensive looking, the kind that belonged to a different world entirely. Sarah picked it up, dried it against her coat, and opened it carefully. Inside, she found nearly $2,000 in cash, several platinum credit cards, and a driver's license bearing the name Richard Caldwell, along with a business card that identified him as the founder and CEO of Caldwell Capital Group. She stood there for a long moment in the cold, staring at that cash. $2,000 would cover Emma's doctor visit, clear the electricity bill, buy groceries for a month, and still leave enough to breathe for a few weeks. Her hands trembled, not from greed, but from the sheer weight of temptation when survival is on the line. She thought about Emma sleeping in their small apartment under a thin blanket, coughing in the night. She thought about how easy it would be to simply keep walking, and then she thought about what she had always told her. Daughter, that who you are in the dark is who you truly are. She found a payphone 2 blocks away, dialed the number on the business card, and left a careful message, explaining what she had found and where she could be reached. She did not expect a call back that night. She certainly did not expect the black car that pulled up outside the diner the very next morning. Richard Caldwell was not what Sarah had imagined. He was tall and quietly dressed, somewhere in his late 50s, with the kind of tired eyes that suggested he had not always lived behind glass towers. He walked into the diner, sat down at her station, and simply said he had come to thank her in person. Sarah set a coffee cup in front of him and told him it was nothing, that anyone would have done the same. He looked at her with an expression she could not quite read and said, very gently, that in his experience, that was simply not true. He asked her about herself, and something about the way he listened, without distraction, without checking his phone, without that particular impatience. She had grown used to reading in people, made her honest. She told him about Emma, about the medical bills, about the 2 jobs she was working, and the 3rd she was considering, taking on weekends. She told him about the certificate in accounting she had started 3 years ago and abandoned when her husband left, because there were not enough hours in the day anymore. Richard Caldwell listened to every word. He left a generous tip, shook her hand, and thanked her again before walking out. Sarah told herself that was the end of it. A nice story she would remember, nothing more. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived from Caldwell Capital Group. Inside was a formal offer, a fully funded scholarship to complete her accounting degree at the university of her choice, a stipend to cover living expenses during her studies, and a guaranteed position within the company upon graduation. Attached to the letter was a handwritten note from Richard himself. It said simply that he had built his company on the belief that integrity was the rarest and most valuable currency in the world, and that he had spent years looking for people who still possessed it without being asked to. He said he was not doing her a favor. He was making an investment in someone who had already proven, on a cold Tuesday night with $2,000 in her hands, exactly who she was. Sarah sat at her kitchen table and read that letter 4 times. Emma climbed into her lap and asked her why she was crying. Sarah pulled her daughter close, pressed her lips to the top of her head, and whispered that sometimes the world surprised you, that sometimes doing the right thing in the dark found its way back to the light. She enrolled in the university the following semester. She graduated with honors 2 years later. She never forgot the wet sidewalk, the trembling hands, or the choice she almost did not make. Because that choice, made in exhaustion and honesty and love for a small girl with a cough, had changed everything. If this story moved your heart, please give it a like. Share it with someone who needs to believe in goodness today, and subscribe to Kindness Corner Stories, where every story reminds you that compassion and integrity never go unrewarded.